The process of making is the point of it. This needs to be a kind of ballet.
If anybody can copy a supposed artist, it's not art.
There's no carving in wood or in stone or knots on a rug that are going to look anything near like what pleats do when they express a line.
Lots of people talk about the reality of say, an elephant in origami. You know, does it look real? Does it look like an elephant? But it's a piece of paper. You know, of course it can't look like an elephant.
I think at heart, one of the things that makes us human, that's both our strength and our weakness, is a need to change things. It's also the heart of the appeal of origami, exploring the surprising magic of just how far you can change that square only by folding.
What are the limits, the physical limits of this art form?
When you put in a crease in a piece of paper, you're essentially changing the memory in that piece.
Origami is just such a great way to get your hands dirty with math. You know, it becomes your laboratory for doing mathematics.
Whenever there's a need in the industry to take a flat sheet and somehow make it smaller, there is a potential for origami to have an application.
In science, this is the most creative you can be. We are artists whether we do science or whether we build sculpture.
Well, first, thanks to everybody here, and Paul and Brian. It's a real pleasure, and we're flattered that you were able to make this happen today. I don't want to take up too much time myself, because really the people who you want to ask the questions to are the artists who are in the back. So first, actually, I'll call up Sally Rosenthal. She's the executive producer. She's an amazing person. And then Bernie Payton, please. You guys should just get up. Like, this is informal. Yeah. Chris, Jeremy, Robert, Michael, Richard. Did I miss anybody? We've had a couple. You guys actually are, yeah, this is quite special to have all these people here. We have a bunch of local, which really helped, but there's an enormous amount of brain talent right here. So, yeah. And many of them have actually brought some of their work. I know Chris Palmer has some new things to show you. And, yeah. And Michael has Wilbur, and I think Chris also has a flower tower here. Jeremy might have a flasher.
This is the paper maker. Is that you? Can you describe what's involved in making paper and what's special about the paper that's used for this? Sure. When I first became inspired to become an origami artist, it was because of the work of Akira Yoshizawa, who you saw in the film. And his work just had that artist touch. So I tried to do this as a young boy with ordinary paper, and it wasn't working. First I thought it was me, and then I thought, maybe it's the paper. I luckily lived in a paper-making town, so I began to study it and then realized that there's chemistry involved and material selection and paper forming techniques. So over the years, my three goals in the paper making, starting from age 16, were the foldability. I wanted it to respond to my touch so that it worked like playing a fine instrument. I could put the expression that I wanted. I wanted the works to last a long time. You know, you put a lot of work into these things, and maybe people buy them, and they should not crumble and fade. And then the third thing, of course, was that I wanted to be able to do this whenever I really needed it. I had to set myself up to make paper on demand. So I did a lot of research. Essentially, we use plant fibers, abaca, which is from a banana plant, or hemp, really good, long, strong stuff like they use in paper money. You grind that up in water, and then you can color it. We use permanent pigments. You float this stuff in water and use various size screens to screen out layers of pulp, thinner or thicker. Press it and dry it, and you've got paper. So our paper can be as thin as tissue and as strong as paper money at the same time. Wilbur is folded from thicker paper, and when we fold the paper, we moisten it slightly sometimes. That's called wet folding. You can see the stylistic difference. But that's, in a nutshell, what the paper making is all about. Richard's our other paper making master.
Most people associate origami with origami paper, which was developed in the 1800s to support the Freubel kindergarten program, where they did a lot of paper folding in Europe, and then it spread through the US and Japan. And sure, you can make origami from anything that you can fold, but to make origami art, you need to use artist materials that are going to last. That's the difference.
I've seen some images around floating around the internet by artists who, instead of fold paper, they just make creases, and they use these creases in such a way to make usually a representational scene. Have you seen this type of art that, again, instead of actual folds, they're just like minor creases in what remains a flat piece of paper? And do you consider that origami?
Have you guys seen that?
So just the crease pattern, and then it's folding up to make a geometric pattern, or what is it making?
No folding. Usually it looks like a room or maybe like an outdoor scene. Lots of kind of, it tries to use painterly three-dimensionality, but again, they're not really folds. It's just a series of creases on an otherwise flat pieces of paper that create a picture or something like that, but it doesn't actually fold up into anything.
Low relief, kind of?
Yes. Yeah, kind of.
Jeremy, why don't you, since you've seen it, and Robert, have you seen it? Yeah. Robert. Okay, Robert, why don't you?
Yeah. So I've seen this, and I'm Robert Lang, and so I'm one of the artists in the film. I've seen this, and for those who haven't, it's low relief. Effectively, they're scoring the paper. The artist is scoring, making shallow creases in the paper, and so the image that you get comes from both the fold lines itself and the slight changes in angle of the paper when lit appropriately give heightened contrast, so you can see representational images. And to me, everyone has a different definition of origami. My definition of origami is it's an art form where folds are the primary means of creating the structure. So that doesn't have any rules about whether it's one or two sheets or whether you can or can't cut. But folding has to be primary. And so in my view, that type of folding, as well as the non-deterministic folding, or otherwise known as crumpling, of Vincent Flauderer, is in fact another branch of origami.
I think that was a very evasive answer. I think the root of the question is, how are they made? Is that correct?
Well, that's another interesting question. I think it both address.
And I have my own. I mean, who knows for sure? But I looked at them really carefully, and I would suggest that there's some sort of laser work, scoring. And that's just my own personal opinion, but I have no proof. So everybody's up to their own personal interpretation.
Well,
the word origami is gradually, in my opinion, becoming equal to the word music. By the way, I'm Michael LaFosse, the paper maker designer too. And today we realize that whatever anyone wishes to call music, or even the word art for that reason, might really be up to their own decision. So when Robert mentioned that, the thing that occurred to me is I wonder what the folks who actually make that work of art wished to or decided to call it. That might be a bit more interesting to hear, their answer of what they're calling it. Maybe they don't want to call it origami. I don't know. I think of it as origami because, as Robert said, if its primary expression is folds in paper, no matter the method of getting them into the paper, that can categorically be origami, like the word music.
Hi, my name's Natalie. So my question for all the artists is, once you have the final product, is there anything that you either spray on the product to make it last for a long time, for example, a lacquer, or is it more like kind of determinate on the paper that you use, and you leave the final piece as is?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that's there are some people in the wide world of the craft of origami that have been known to paint their final thing with lacquer. It's a small set of people, and it makes it much different object. It kind of freezes it in place and takes it away from that idea that that process brought it there, in my opinion. And well, yeah, and sometimes in order to make it more durable, it is necessary, and Jeremy has some examples of that sort of thing for performing. If it needs to actually open and close many times, then some treatment is necessary. That's kind of an interesting subject that has movement.
Hi, Richard Alexander. We do some commercial installations, some which are permanent. We have to spray the tops of the origami mobiles with maybe an acrylic spray that will allow the workers to clean them and keep them dusted so they look fresh. Window displays are often up for a short period of time and there's no coating. When people make origami jewelry, it depends on the age group of people that are going to be wearing it. Jewelry sold to younger children, they will dip in 2-part epoxy and make it bulletproof.
That's what I was referring to, that some people do that, yeah. Here's some examples of paper that's been treated for utility with tape.
Okay, right here. And so this is okay. So this one is first folded out of a large sheet of paper. I couldn't find that big one, so I pieced several together to get this big of a square. And then after I folded it, I did paint it, and I reinforced on the back laminating.
So there's some plastic in there with the paper.
Yes. So, and this one has lasted me a few years, actually, opening it during all my performances. So, and these are some other ones that I laminated. And with acrylic paint, which is also acrylic paint is also very flexible, so that's what I use.
It was hinted towards earlier, but I didn't get the chance to follow up. You mentioned, it said with some disdain that they might have been using lasers in that paper creasing process. But I was actually wondering, I didn't see any tools, or maybe I missed it. I didn't really see many or any tools in this video. Is it kind of looked down upon in the origami community to use like small poking tools to make these teeny creases, or did I just not see that part of the process?
I think you just didn't see that part of the process, and also different people do. Some people use bone folder, and some people like to laser cut or etch a little, very lightly with very little power to make creases. So it's there and around, and people use small tools for fine work as well.
I just want to clarify, since I've made that disdaining comment. No, I just think that origami, it's okay to use tools, but if it's sort of important to present, like if you use cuts, for instance, then you put a work on display, and maybe people in this day and age might consider that model doesn't have cuts. And then that happened to me when the first time that I made a crab. I wanted to make a crab. I saw it in the book, and I was really excited to make it, and then it turned out it had cuts, and I was like, and so, yeah, it's just presenting things with I think it's important to have some sort of description of the medium, the method, in order to really present an artwork, and that's just my own personal opinion.
I was just going to mention, a lot of people, including myself, do use tools. I use anything ranging from tweezers, glasses, reading glasses sometimes, and on some pieces I've also used a laser scriber to scribe creases. And sort of my view is, if tools help you create a better artwork, and kind of what Jeremy alluded to, you're not claiming that you're doing something different from what you're doing, then I think any tool that helps you is a good thing. Just as if you're a painter, using a brush to apply the paint rather than spitting it out of your mouth the way the old people did is a good thing as well.
I have seen, again, images floating around of someone who used toilet paper rolls to create faces. Have you seen this? Is that artist up here? Or do you have an opinion on using found objects to
that artist
do
is
that?
junior in France.
Le Crimp, maybe.
He's a member of Le Crimp, and he lives in Paris.
In the film.
Yeah. And I personally met with him and saw his paper rolls and tried it myself as well, I must confess.
We have somebody whose name is Linda Miyahara, and she delights in having contests at conventions, and she will give us things like a tortilla, a piece of plastic wrap, a toilet seat cover, a towel, paper bag, anything that she can come up with to fold, and you have to sit there in front of judges and hey, you have 1 minute to make a creation. It's rather exciting. So yes, anything can be folded.
Sounds like an Iron Chef of paper. Kind of.
Yeah. In fact, you know, the origami community worldwide is very well connected. It's a small group, but it's a huge group, and we all know each other. And many of us here for years, Vanessa was able to learn about each of us by the recommendation from one of us to another. So it just went around the world. That also happens when it comes to commercial jobs. Maybe somebody contacts somebody and says, oh, you know who you have to contact to get this done? And if that person is too busy or contractually obligated to something else, you say, oh, I know just who you should go see. That kind of thing is actually very common. And speaking of the toilet paper tube thing, Richard and I have had to engineer parts folded from Kapton plastic that are collapsible and end up in satellites in orbit right now. So our fingerprints, if they didn't clean them very well, have been they're in orbit right now, but a similar kind of a shape, about a size of a toilet paper tube, and geometrically designed to collapse a certain way, hand folded, sent off for gold coating, and there you go. So from toilet paper tubes to orbit.
Hi, this is Sally Rosenthal. I have a question and a comment. Vanessa, I don't think people saw you when you first went up there, and since you're the director, would you get in the camera frame, please, so people know what you look like who are on the other side of the world? Just be in the frame so they can see you. And then the other thing, I have an unfair advantage because I know what's going on, but Chris has some hats that I know people want to see, and I have one on.
Yeah,
and
I
would
do
you
have
show
a
that?
collection of silly hats.
Thank you.
And also, before that, can you talk to them
I'll get
about the way that silk is folded a little bit differently than paper?
Mhm.
Why the cloth
Yeah.
And can you repeat the question, please?
is a little bit different than the way paper is.
So yeah, there are other things that get folded besides paper. That was and Jeff was indicating that I could talk a little bit about folding in other mediums, specifically textile, and a little bit of the history and relationship of how paper folding and textile folding have crossed in my work. So here's small side thing is silly hats. Just for a moment here, they make people look silly, but they do have some fun math behind them, and they also have a technique for expressing. This is called paper engineering. This is cutting and folding, and paper engineering. And this is a way that meshes and computer 3D models can get out of the computer in a way that wouldn't happen if it was happening with glue, which is a way that people do paper engineering and cutting and putting things together. These are instead of accumulated error that happens when you glue tabs together to make 3D models, like we're wearing these 3D models on our head. This is self-correcting, so it's accumulated perfection, which is kind of a nice thing to, like, people aren't used to that. Like, they're used to like little errors getting worse most of the time. So these adjust and they move a little bit because there's no glue on them, and I can just indicate a little bit. I don't know if it's a little far away, but you can see the connection in here. It's a little bit like a zipper, and it allows for, as you put each little piece together, they can still move a little bit, and they want to move towards the perfect place of the two edges of the face of the mesh. So I'd encourage that when we do a little mingling here, that everyone come and try to put these hats on, please. I like to collect silly portraits with the hats on, and I'd encourage a bit of that later. Yeah. So here's a little bit of how do things get folded in other mediums, textiles, and some cross relationship, and also a little bit of backwards process, because this is a special demonstration piece that we can see. It looks, I could have pasted these things on here, after watching this movie, you're probably guessing that it's one piece of cloth, but I could have pasted them on. If you'd never seen the movie, you might have thought that I pieced them on and sewed lots of little pieces together to make this pattern. But we get to see the reverse process of this ordered thing go to chaos and flat. I pull like that. And here's we can see in low relief the crease pattern, yes. And then it goes back, and this going back part is not exactly like what I see when I'm doing this process, when I'm folding this. And this is a kind of class of folding of where the lines of a tiling are expressed as pleats, and this expression, or this style of folding is from a Japanese teacher of mine, Shuzo Fujimoto, and I figured out after some time of doing the paper folding style of this these kinds of patterns, where every line becomes a pleat, and then there's some interesting things about pleats expressing tilings and lines, because funny things happen at the vertices that are unique to this expression of a folded plane, whatever the plane is, paper or silk. And this is one of the most remarkable things about and interesting things about folding a piece of paper to do this and folding this silk is that a piece of paper is highly technical to do this, because we saw as it came apart there was all this distortion. And if you try to fold this in paper and you make all the creases and then push it together, there's a lot of distortion in the paper. Needs to go through a very complex kind of state before it gets to this final state. And paper doesn't really want to do that, and so only 30, 40 people in the world are really very good at doing that in paper. It's a highly technical, special niche in origami. But this is another kind of pleasant contradiction in that this technique in cloth, if you do it a different way and take advantage of the fact that cloth can be distorted, it becomes a counterexample to when we see something complex, we always think it needed something complex to do it, and this is a counterexample. This is not a complex method. It doesn't take skill. I can take a room full of 11-year-olds and they can walk away with a piece of folded silk in a very complex thing, and you won't really exactly believe me, because lots of craft people will say, oh, well, my thing's easy, and 30, 40 steps later, it's not really easy. And I could very well be one of those, but this is a beautiful counterexample that's a kind of amazing thing that pulls down a highly technical thing so that many, many, many people can do it. It's a little bit like the right technique, like many people can do knitting. It's kind of a simple little thing. It produces complex things, and it has some levels of complexity within the activity, but the right medium and the right kinds of expression for that medium are coming together in a way that where in cloth that is true. And part of the interesting, to tie it back to the origami story, is that in order to get to this cloth and this work and be able to have this technique to be shared, it needed to come first from paper. And that's an interesting story that's a little more detailed, but I'm glad to let you know a little bit about that and share more than what's in the movie and a wider world out there.
How did you plan to make this movie? I know the answer is you didn't.
Well, perhaps this would be relevant to some people out there who have a fascination about something. I first learned about mathematicians doing origami about 5 years ago, and I was in no shape, way, or form a filmmaker at that time. But I had always had a kind of an amateur interest in math and generally more of a mathematical person, but was looking for a way to explore the connections between math and art and how general creativity could be applied in both ways, you know, together or separately. And so when I heard about the mathematician in the film, Tom Hull, who was making, as you saw, some modular pieces that were so mathematically based but also so beautiful to look at, I thought that that would be a nice short film. So I decided to visit him, and I had hoped to make a 7 or 8 minute movie about the mathematics of origami. At that time, not knowing anything about what I was about to get into. But as time went by, Tom Hull introduced me to Michael LaFosse, and I slowly began to understand that what fascinated me most about the art form was not that, in fact, either mathematicians were doing it or heavy scientists or sculptors or artists, but the fact that it was a medium that drew all those people together, or at least attracted them because of its qualities. And therein I decided to explore the kind of creativity that the scientists and the mathematicians and the artists applied to the medium itself. And I felt that the metaphors about a square of paper and the idea of this uniform accessibility and democracy of the medium itself had a lot to explore. So that's how it happened, and 5 years later, here we are.
Thank you. Richard Alexander here. We just, as artists and people involved with origami, we just want to thank Vanessa for the wonderful story that she's told about this group of people. Going back several years, a lot of these people were folding in relative isolation. There were small conventions and a few publications, and when Michael and I opened the Origami Do studio in 1996, I searched the word origami on Al Gore's internet, and I got about 1 million hits. And when we opened our show in Waikiki last year, I did a Google search and found 32 million hits, something like that, on the word origami. Congratulations.
Well, it's not to sound too self-congratulatory up here, but it's obviously an honor for me to be able to work with the artists and their artwork. And we did put information about all of these artists on the film's website, which is betweenthefolds.com. So if you go there, there's links to pretty much everybody up here. So, oh, that's right. They're in the area, in the Bay Area. In fact, Robert, maybe you want to talk about this. I don't know much about Peacock.
So there are origami conventions around the world, and there's one called the Pacific Coast Origami Convention. It's every 2 years. This year, it's in San Francisco. It's November 5th through 8th. About 200 people. Origami classes at all levels, from beginner to extremely advanced. And if you want to learn more about it, go to the Origami USA website, origami-usa.org, or Google for PCOC, Peacock, and you'll find out what it's about and how to come. Oh yes, there is an exhibition, and that is open to the public, so you can just come to the exhibition if you want.
We get asked a lot if the DVD is available, and as of about 4 days ago, we're thrilled to say yes from our website, betweenthefolds.com. Thanks.
The very first question, I think it was Jesse, asked about paper making, and the DVD has a lot of extra footage that you didn't see here. So if you are interested in the details, Vanessa has provided information, so just drill down into the other things on the DVD. Thank you.